Hello, everyone, and welcome to Spaceflight Now's live coverage of the latest mission from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. I'm Will Robinson Smith, reporter with Spaceflight Now. So good to have you with us here on this Wednesday morning. We're broadcasting, as we always do, from the Spaceflight Now News Bureau here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. Hope you're all having a good work week, school week, whatever the week may hold in store for you. I hope it is going as well as you possibly imagined it would. The week seems to be going well for SpaceX as it was able to successfully launch its Starlink 17-8 mission in the hours past last night from Vandenberg Space Force Base, deploying 24 Starlink satellites into low Earth orbit about an hour and a few minutes after liftoff. Similar operation on tap for today, launch of 28 Starlink V2 mini satellites from Space Launch Complex 40 here at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Those Starlinks currently nestled in the payload fairings of the Falcon 9. You see there live at your screen, standing tall at pad 40. As we're getting going, certainly appreciate those of you who were up late, able to watch last night's mission and are back again with us this morning. If this is your first launch of the work week, welcome in. You could do us a big favor just by clicking that like button just beneath the video, sharing the stream with some friends and family, allowing some more folks to find their way into this live launch coverage. Our Spaceflight Now editor, Stephen Young, is running the technical operations of the broadcast today. In addition to Stephen running the technical operations of the broadcast, behind the scenes, we have our photographer Adam working the cameras here at the press site. John and Michael are off this morning, but if you're not following our full slate of photographers, you can find them at their handles here on X. Adam is at Aburn NYC. Michael is at MD Kane Jr. John is at John Pisani Photo. Also, be sure to follow Spaceflight Now simply at Spaceflight Now. We're also on Blue Sky, Threads, and Facebook for those of you who are not on X. We'll be joined a little bit later this morning by our friends Pete Karstens with Max Q Productions alongside Chuck and Jen Briggs with C&J Images. Helping behind the scenes are our wonderful moderators here this morning. So we've got Aussie Space Girl holding it down in the live chat. Hope you're doing well, Stephanie. Thanks for being with us today. You can help make the job of the moderators that much easier just by following the rules of the live chat. We ask that you converse in English so that our mods can respond as appropriate. That you hold off on delving into overt politics or religion. Also, don't type in all caps. Emojis are perfectly fine, but we just ask that you don't create a huge block of them that takes up a big chunk of the live chat visibility. And last but certainly not least, that you treat each other with the kindness and respect that you yourself would like to be treated. We'll all get along swimmingly. This and every live launch opportunity are made possible in no small part thanks to the ongoing support of our YouTube channel member community here. So thanks to folks like Deb Reese, Val Roberts Harold, Sue Straub, Sulfur for Lunch, Amy Ketchum, and many others. Channel membership comes with a number of perks, including discounts at our online shop, which is shop.spacelightnow.com, access to member-only videos here on YouTube, access to our members-only Discord server, and of course, the ability to watch all of our live launch liftoff moments from here in Florida in 4K. Last little bit of housekeeping. If you have a comment or question about this mission or other goings on in the realm of space or space flight, You can use that YouTube Super Chat feature to have your comment or query elevated potentially for discussion, assuming it is an appropriate comment, of course. Not only will you be giving us some interesting things to talk about as we cruise on through the countdown today, but you'll also be supporting what we do here at Spaceflight now, and that, my friends, is always greatly appreciated. Speaking of our members, want to welcome in new channel member Carrie Rencher joining us with membership at the pad leader level. Although I think that may be a holdover from our last broadcast. Regardless, we're glad to have you with us, Carrie. Time now currently T minus 52 minutes, 40 seconds and counting. SpaceX is moving towards a planned liftoff of its Falcon 9 rocket at 7:56 a.m. Eastern today, 11:56 UTC for our friends around the world. If for whatever reason SpaceX is unable to launch today, it does have a 24-hour backup opportunity. Before we get into our countdown timeline, let's take a beat to talk about the weather today. You can see a number of clouds hanging around in the vicinity of the pad, a little bit offshore as well. 45th Weather Squadron forecast a 70% chance for favorable weather conditions for today's Falcon flight. Their primary concern was potential interference from cumulus clouds. The booster recovery weather looks good for today. Some light liftoff winds trending between about 8 to 12 miles per hour. If for whatever reason, again, SpaceX is unable to launch today and needs to pivot to their backup opportunity, conditions improve slightly, up to 80% chance for favorable weather in that 24-hour turnaround scenario, but hopefully that won't be necessary for this mission. Taking a live look now from our friends Chuck and Jen Briggs' camera angle. Still waters across the Banana River there, looking up at Pad 40 from on Merritt Island. Just under 50 minutes to go with the planned launch of the Falcon 9 rocket. Let's go ahead and take a beat to talk about the countdown timeline. These are the milestones that SpaceX is looking forward to ahead of a good flight of their Falcon 9 rocket from Pad 40. As usual, things get rolling with the SpaceX launch director making the call on the startup prop load, which happens at around T minus 38 minutes or so. SpaceX does its readiness poll electronically, so if it feels like it's in a good position, it can conduct this a little bit earlier. But once the go ahead for fueling is given, tanking starts at the T minus 35-minute mark with a loading of RP1, which is a rocket grade kerosene that happens on board both the Falcon 9's first and second stages. And at the same time, liquid oxygen will begin to flow on board the Falcon 9's first stage. T minus 30 minutes is when SpaceX starts to load a cryogenic helium on board the pressure vessels for the Falcon 9's first stage. Same is true on the second stage a few minutes afterwards. The helium, of course, is important because it's used to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. T minus 23 minutes, the second stage RP1 tank should be full. And at T minus 20 minutes and 50 seconds, we'll see the strong back chill down process get underway. This is SpaceX thermally conditioning the feed lines at the pad before it begins to load locks on the second stage. We see this visually manifest as the so-called big vent that occurs starting around T minus 20 minutes and 20 seconds here at pad 40, lasting just under 4 minutes. Once the vent wraps up, it sets the stage for that locks to flow beginning at the 16-minute mark. Moving right along, T minus 7 minutes is when the engine chill sequence begins. SpaceX will flow a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps, helping to protect those engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during startup. 6 minutes before flight, the first stage kerosene tank should be full. And at T minus 4.5 minutes, we'll see the retraction of the strong back. First, the clamp arms just beneath the payload fairings will open up, and then the transporter erector, otherwise referred to as the strong back, will recline a few degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket, and it stays in that position until liftoff. At that point, it will then pull back in a much more rapid fashion to clear the way for the vertical climb of the Falcon 9. 3 minutes before launch, the first stage liquid oxygen tank is full. Same is true on the second stage, about a minute afterwards. At that point, the Falcon 9 rocket is fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. In the final 60 seconds, as we hear the call that the Falcon 9 is in startup, control of the countdown is handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers, and at the same time, the propellant tanks are brought up to flight pressure. The SpaceX launch director will give their go for launch call T minus 45 seconds if all is proceeding nominally. The engine ignition command will be issued at T minus 3 seconds, and if all 9 Merlin engines are healthy and ignite as expected, the command will be given for the hold down clamps to release the Falcon 9 rocket for a T0 liftoff. Once again, coming up at 7:56 a.m. Eastern, 11:56 UTC, or now just past 46 minutes from now. Time now T minus 42 minutes, 19 seconds and counting. Yesterday's Falcon 9 launch from Vandenberg Space Force Base marked the debut of their newest Falcon booster. Today is more typical for SpaceX, the reuse of one of its first stages. However, not quite seasoned enough to make it into the Falcon 9 Frequent Flyers Club. Today's booster is B1083, which will be launching for a 14th time. Here's a look at what the current roster for SpaceX's top 5 most flown boosters looks like at the moment. We will see a little bit of movement on this list coming up on Friday with the launch of the Starlink 10-57 mission. That flight from Launch Complex 39A expected to feature the Falcon booster 1069, which will make its 27th flight. Just about 40 and a half minutes remaining on the clock. Coming up in roughly 2.5 minutes from now is when the SpaceX launch director is expected to make the call on the start of prop load for today's flight. Now, SpaceX does its poll electronically, as I mentioned earlier in the broadcast. And of course, this happens before they start streaming mission audio, so we won't actually hear the confirmation that they are go for the start of prop load. Some folks were asking in the live chat the direction of today's Falcon 9 rocket. We'll give you a more detailed rundown of the trajectory a little bit later on in the broadcast, but broadly speaking, the rocket will fly in a northeasterly trajectory once leaving the pad there at Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. And will fly along the coast of eastern United States. First stage booster set to touch down on the drone ship. Short fall of gravitas coming up about a little less than 8.5 minutes after liftoff. As per usual, SpaceX will discontinue onboard views from its Falcon 9 rocket following stage separation and once it achieves a nominal parking orbit for the upper stage. While we won't get to see this live, this is an idea of what the payload deployment sequence looks like from a previous Starlink mission. The full stack of 28 will be released simultaneously from the Falcon 9's upper stage and begin to slowly drift apart from one another until they reach their proper operating positions. You could see in the reflection of one of those Starlink satellites the two arms that were holding the satellites in place on the Falcon 9's upper stage kind of tucked back into the Falcon 9 rocket. And that way, when SpaceX performs the deorbit burn, this all comes down as one unit, as opposed to the uh, previously released mechanism, which has been quite a while since SpaceX used this. It had one pin that was released and then that just kind of jettisoned, allowing the Starlinks to then drift away from the Falcon 9's upper stage. We're coming right up on the start of fueling here in roughly 30 seconds, assuming SpaceX gave the go-ahead to begin tanking its Falcon 9 rocket. SpaceX, of course, as we mentioned earlier, will begin with loading liquid oxygen on board the booster, as well as RP-1, the fuel for both stages of the Falcon 9 rocket, on both stages. Less than 35 minutes to go. Again, at this point, assuming SpaceX gave the go-ahead, they are now tanking their Falcon 9 rocket there at pad 40. Time now T minus 32 minutes, 49 seconds and counting. As SpaceX should be in the mode of fueling its Falcon 9 rocket here at pad 40. Things are moving and grooving over at SpaceX's other launch site here at the Kennedy Space Center. Bringing our eyes over to Launch Complex 39A now for just a spell. You can see the transporter erector is now on the move, paused at this point, though, on the ramp headed down to the hangar, just off camera there on the right-hand side. SpaceX is preparing for the next Falcon 9 launch from here. That's coming up on Friday morning, Starlink 10-57. Notably, this mission is set to feature SpaceX's 500th Falcon recovery, if, of course, all goes well with today's booster landing, and they have success with the booster landing on that mission as well. SpaceX will use the drone ship, just read the instructions to support the catch of beat 1069 on that mission. "30 minutes to go before the planned flight of this Falcon 9 rocket. It is quite hard to make out given the time and the lighting here, but I do believe we're seeing some vapor between the rocket's booster and the crew access tower there at the pad, which would suggest that SpaceX is, in fact, fueling its Falcon 9 rocket in preparation for a liftoff just before the top of the hour. Time now T minus 27 minutes, 36 seconds and counting. As we take a peek in the Banana River. You can see some dolphin activity there. Just about 25 and a half minutes to go on this Falcon 9 rocket launch. At this point, SpaceX is loading cryogenic helium onto the Falcon 9's second stage. Did the same on the first stage just a few minutes ago. That helium will be used to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. T minus 23 minutes, 58 seconds and counting. As we get ready to see this Falcon booster fly for a 14th time, let's go ahead and step back in time. Talk about the flight history of B-1083. Wind the clock back to its first mission. That was, of course, in support of the Crew 8 flight to the International Space Station, launching on board Dragon Endeavour, which lifted off from the Kennedy Space Center on March 4th of last year. That was followed up by a pair of Starlink missions. You had Starlink 6-48 on April 10th and Starlink 6-56 on May 8th. Followed up by another astronaut mission, this time the crew of Polaris Dawn took flight on September 10th, lifting off from Historic Launch Complex 39A as well, on board the Dragon known as Resilience. That was followed up by another Dragon flight, this time of the cargo variety, CRS 31, launching on November 5th. Later that month, another Starlink flight, Starlink 6-65, on November 30th. Then a small sat mission out to geostationary. You had Astronus Block 2, the From One to Many mission. That was followed up by Starlink 13-1, technically a ride share, since it featured the launch of 21 Starlink satellites and a couple of Starshield satellites. That was followed up by the launch of Intuitive Machines' second Nova C lunar lander named Athena. That was on February 27th. Mostly Starlinks from here to now, with one exception. We had Starlink 12-17 on April 13th, Starlink 6-91 on May 10th, Starlink 12-24 on June 10th. Most recently, though, this booster launched the Dror 1 mission for Israel. And coming up in just a little more than 21 minutes from now, we'll see the next batch of Starlink satellites head up to low Earth orbit. The next milestone that we're watching for is the beginning of the so-called Big Vent. Less than 10 seconds from now, SpaceX will begin the thermal conditioning of the feed lines at the pad. In T minus 20 minutes and 20 seconds, we'll see this visually manifest as the Big Vent, which will last for just under 4 minutes. And there you see the vent is beginning. Time now T minus 16 minutes, 39 seconds and counting. The big vent is now just about to wrap up here at pad 40. SpaceX turns to second stage liquid oxygen loading. Just about 14 minutes remaining on the clock ahead of today's flight of this Falcon 9 rocket. As we're getting down to it, want to thank the more than 1,800 of you who are watching along with us live today. If you haven't already, you could do us a big favor just by clicking that like button and sharing the stream to allow more folks to find their way into this live launch coverage this morning. Turning now to the payload that's on board the Falcon rocket. 28 Starlink V2 mini optimized satellites getting ready to head into LEO. This will be SpaceX's 79th launch featuring Starlink satellites. The optimized versions are considerably lighter than their predecessor of the V2 Mini, as you can see with that weight difference. With their solar panels unfurled, they have a wingspan of about 100 feet or 30 meters from tip to tip. They use argon Hall effect thrusters for in-orbit maneuvering. Built up in Redmond, Washington, which is near Seattle, these satellites today will be deployed at about 172 miles or 277 kilometers in altitude at a 53 degrees inclination. And with just about 12 and a half minutes on the clock, let's take a beat to talk about SpaceX's workhorse vehicle, the Falcon 9 rocket, which stands at 70 meters or 229 feet in height. The vehicle has a diameter of about 3.66 meters or roughly 12 feet. Majority of that, of course, is made up by the Falcon booster. Again, today's booster is B1083, getting ready to make its 14th trip to space and back. At the base of the first stage are 9 Merlin engines, which burn a rocket-grade kerosene and liquid oxygen, producing 1.7 million pounds of thrust at liftoff. Around the engine compartment are those black carbon fiber landing legs that are a key part of SpaceX's ability to reuse the booster by landing it. Today, they'll perform a touchdown operation using the drone ship called a shortfall of gravitas. Above the first stage is the inner stage. This is a composite structure which consists of an aluminum honeycomb core, which is surrounded by carbon fiber. In that image on the right-hand side of your screen, you can see the deployable hypersonic grid fins. These are titanium winglets that provide stability and steering for the Falcon 9 as it comes back to the atmosphere, tail first like a big old dart heading towards the drone ship. At the top of the inner stage are three mechanical latches that attach to the rocket's second stage, and at first stage main engine cutoff, high-pressure helium is used to release those latches, and four pneumatic pushers ensure a clean separation. Also, the second stage engine nozzle is housed safely inside the interstage adapter until the point of stage separation. Speaking of that second stage, the upper stage of the Falcon 9 rocket, powered by a single modified Merlin engine called a Merlin vacuum engine, or an MVAC engine. It's equipped with a large nozzle, which is optimized for burns in the vacuum of space, hence the name. It produces more than 220,500 pounds of thrust, and it will be fired twice on today's flight to place the 28 Starlink satellites into their intended orbit. Like with the first stage, the second stage also burns the same propellant mix of LOX and RP1. Following the deployment of the Starlink satellites, there will be one final burn, the deorbit burn, driving the upper stage back into the atmosphere where it's designed to burn up and help eliminate the risk of creating any unnecessary space debris on this mission. Finally, at the top of the Falcon 9 stack are the payload fairings, which are currently encapsulating the 28 Starlink satellites. The fairings are made up of a carbon composite material and stand 13.1 meters or 43 feet in height and are 5.2 meters or 17.1 feet in diameter. The two fairing halves will be recovered a little bit further downrange from where the booster lands on the drone ship. Just a hair before the 7-minute mark at this point in the count. Coming up on the point in the countdown where SpaceX is thermally conditioning the 9 Merlin engines at the base, the Falcon 9 first stage, running a little bit of oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps to help protect those engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage. We're also now less than a minute away from the First stage RP-1 tank being full. Before we get views from SpaceX at the pad level alongside mission audio, let's go ahead and talk about where this Falcon 9 rocket is going to be flying once it does leave the pad today. Talking a little trajectory. Falcon 9 will take flight from Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, and it will head in a northeasterly trajectory up the coast of the United States. Might be a little bright for people to see this Falcon 9 rocket as it makes its ascent, but if you are able to capture any photos or video, be sure to tag us on social media. You can find us most places simply at Spaceflight Now. Following stage separation, the first stage booster will target a touchdown on the drone ship. Actually, it's a short fall of gravitas today, not just read the instructions. That particular booster will be used in Friday, or that particular drone ship will be used to catch the booster launching Friday's Falcon 9 mission. Also, the payload fairings will be recovered by SpaceX. Following atmospheric reentry, they'll splash down in the waters of the Atlantic Ocean under the support of steerable parachutes. Brought aboard one of SpaceX's recovery vessels and then onto Port Canaveral, where they will be offloaded and then trucked over to the Hangar X site here at the Kennedy Space Center, where they will be refurbished and turned around for future missions.
Strong back lower has started.
And we're seeing some good pad level views of the Falcon 9 rocket there at Slick 40 and getting some mission audio now from SpaceX as well. As you just heard, they're about to begin the strong back lowering process. You can see the clamp arms just beneath the payload fairings are opening up, and soon that large structure just behind the rocket from this angle will recline away from the Falcon 9, stay in that position until liftoff. Coming up in just about 30 seconds, the first stage liquid oxygen tank should be full. We should hear a call out representing that.
Stage 1 LOX load is complete.
Good call from SpaceX. We're now waiting a similar call regarding the rocket's second stage. That should come around the 2-minute mark. Also worth noting for those in the area of Cape Canaveral today, the base notes that they are going to be conducting an on-site exercise. Quote, during this time, you may see increased activity across the installation, including emergency vehicles, sirens, and response personnel. So if you do spot that in your drive along Port Canaveral, Cape Canaveral, or the vicinity of Cape Canaveral Space Force Base, don't worry. This is just a drill happening today.
Stage 2 LOX load is complete.
And with that call, the Falcon 9 rocket is now fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. Coming up on the ground gas closeouts here momentarily. SpaceX releasing the remaining liquid oxygen from the feed lines at the pad.
Gas launch closeout has started.
And with that, we're coming up on the final minute before liftoff of this Starlink mission.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
With that, we're just waiting the SpaceX launch director to give their final go for launch call, which should be coming in the next few seconds.
Launch director, go for launch.
And with that clearance, we're coming up now in the final 30 seconds before liftoff of this launch vehicle. "15 seconds. And here we go. In 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Engine ignition and liftoff. Liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket on the Starlink 10-22 mission. The Falcon 9 has cleared the towers.
Power and telemetry nominal.
Falcon 9 is supersonic.
Falcon 9 now traveling faster than the speed of sound, making its ascent from Florida's Space Coast. Coming up on max Q, the point of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle.
Max Q.
Rocket now throttling its engines back up, now through the thickest part of the atmosphere. Coming up on MVAC chill, where SpaceX will thermally condition that Merlin vacuum engine on the rocket's second stage.
I'm back. Chill.
We're now coming upon a few events in fairly rapid succession. We'll see first stage main engine cutoff, or MECO, at about T plus 2 minutes and 24 seconds. That'll be followed by stage separation and then the ignition of the Merlin vacuum engine on the rocket's second stage. Payload fairings are set to jettison just before the 3-minute mark. We're now less than 20 seconds away from MECO.
Main engine cutoff.
Stage separation confirmed.
MVAC ignition.
All good calls, good visuals. See those hypersonic grid fins now deploying. Fairing jettison is coming up next.
Fairing separation confirmed.
And a good view of those Starlink satellites, all 28 of them. And a shot of one of the fairing halves making its way back down toward the waters of the Atlantic Ocean. Now, just about 3.5 minutes into the mission, everything moving nominally by all accounts. Coming up, our next milestone that we should be seeing is the start of the entry burn, in which SpaceX will use 3 out of the 9 Merlin engines at the base of the Falcon booster to begin to slow that part of the vehicle down and prepare the way for the forthcoming landing burn. That entry burn set to begin at about T plus 6 minutes and 8 seconds, and it'll last less than 30 seconds in total. The booster 1069 has passed its apogee in today's flight, now starting to make its descent towards the drone ship. And again, today SpaceX is using this ship called a shortfall of gravitas. Taking a quick peek at our live chat here, it sounds like it was just a hair or two cloudy for a lot of folks here in Central Florida beyond the immediate vicinity of the Space Coast to see this mission. Just about a minute away from the start of the entry burn now.
Stage 1 FTS has safed.
Stage 1 entry burn startup. Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
And with the conclusion of the entry burn, now looking towards the start of the landing burn on today's mission. That single engine burn to cushion the touchdown of this first stage, set to begin just a little before the 8-minute mark.
Stage 1 transonic.
Now traveling below the speed of sound.
Stage 2 is in terminal guidance.
Stage 1 landing burn. Stage 1 landing leg deploy.
Stage 2 FTS has safed.
Stage 1 landing confirmed.
And a good pinpoint landing for Falcon booster B1083. Misspoke a moment or two ago when I mistakenly called that B1069. 1069 is going to fly at the end of this week.
Nominal orbit insertion.
And with a good shutdown of that Merlin vacuum engine and a nominal orbit insertion call, the upper stage of the Falcon 9 rocket will now coast until about T plus 54 minutes and 47 seconds. There will be a brief 1-second burn on that upper stage engine to circularize the orbit. And then the Starlink satellites will be deployed at T plus 1 hour, 4 minutes, and 9 seconds post liftoff. And with good liftoff and landing of B1083, let's go ahead and now turn to our mission stats as they currently stand. Do want to quickly thank, though, Donald Evans, one of our channel members, for a $2 super chat. Thank you, Donald. Appreciate your support today. That touchdown of B1083 wrapped up its 14th trip to space and back. Today's flight was the 527th launch of a Falcon 9 rocket to date. This was the 110th mission for Falcon 9 rocket in 2025. This was also the company's 462nd Falcon booster reflight, with the launch of a booster that has flown at least once. This was the 157th orbital launch within the last 365 days, the 276th from Pad 40 for SpaceX, and the 331st overall orbital launch from Pad 40 as well. Here's the bar chart representation of the Falcon family of rockets so far. SpaceX still aiming for 170 Falcon 9 launches this year, so still got 60 left on the docket if all goes well, at least. Moving on to some recovery stats. This was the 123rd good landing on the drone ship called Shortfall of Gravitas. It marked the 405th SpaceX drone ship landing and the 499th SpaceX booster landing. The big 500 coming up. Expect that on Friday morning. Finally, with some industry stats, this was the 75th orbital launch from the Sunshine State, the 116th from U.S. soil, the 128th from U.S. Rocket Company, and the 199th orbital launch attempt around the world. There have been 5 orbital mishaps so far this year. Here's where our pie chart now currently stands. For those of you who were not with us last night, we do have a new entrant on the pie chart here. You can see on the bottom corner of your screen on the right-hand side, Israel launching its small launcher yesterday to send a reconnaissance satellite into orbit. And it looks like we've got our launch replays ready for you, so let's go ahead and kick things off with the fixed view from our Adam Bernstein. Moving on to Pete's tracker. Today was certainly one of the trickier tracking days given the amount of clouds that were in the area, especially down where Pete was tracking in southern Brevard County. We're going to skip the south tracker and come back to that. Going back to the press site tracker now. And as you mentioned, we're just working to get Pete's wide tracker shot. We'll have that for you just momentarily. As a reminder, now is a good time to hit that subscribe button as we're coming up on the next launch from here in Florida from Launch Complex 39A here at the Kennedy Space Center. You can head over to our 24/7 live stream, Launchpad Live, to watch the progress of the Falcon 9 rocket as it makes its emergence from the hangar likely tomorrow ahead of a flight early Friday morning. And with that, we're going to go ahead and wind things down for our live coverage today. Certainly appreciate all of you for hanging out with us. Thanks to our moderators in the chat, Aussie Space Girl, and it looks like Mark Otto was also able to join us as well. Appreciate all of our mods for whenever they're able to help out. Certainly makes things much smoother in the chat. Want to thank our photographer Adam for tracking at the press site this morning. Big thanks to our friends Pete Carsons with Max Q Productions and to Chuck and Jen Briggs with C&J Images for their tracking assistance as well. Big thanks to our Spaceflight Now editor Stephen Young for running the technical operations of the broadcast. Most of all, big thanks to you for wherever you've been watching from. Good thing SpaceX went when they did. Looks like the incoming weather may have made things both difficult for SpaceX to launch much later than they took flight, or for us to track the Falcon 9 rocket. Once again, we've got our next launch scheduled for Friday morning from Pad 39A here at the Kennedy Space Center. So we hope to see you all back bright and early for that mission. SpaceX is aiming for its 500th Falcon booster landing. For all of us here at Spaceflight Now, I'm Will Robinson Smith. Remember, be good to yourselves, be good to others. We will see you next time, folks. And until then, bye-bye.